Lots of news in Iran and with impeachment. Republican Senator Jim Risch of Idaho. He serves on the Intelligence, and he's also chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks so much for taking the time this morning.
Jim, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let me begin with the intelligence that led to this attack on Soleimani. Two Republican senators are questioning the administration's justification for this. Rand Paul saying there was no specific information given to us of a specific attack. Mike Lee saying that the briefing they got from the White House on this treated senators in effect like good little boys and girls. If this was an imminent attack, why wasn't that evidence shown? And are you convinced it was an imminent threat?
Well, first of all, Jim, the background is I'm chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. I'm number 2 on the Intelligence Committee. I spent almost a dozen years on both of them. The day before this general briefing that was given to all senators, those of us on the Intelligence Committee received hours of briefings from various intelligence organizations. We have 17 of them. I was absolutely convinced, 100% convinced, clearly convinced that there was imminent danger to Americans when the president took a strike. Now, I think we're getting a little mixed up in the criticism that Mike Lee has of that particular hearing. Mike's a dear friend. He is a bright, bright guy. His frustration came from the fact that he and Rand Paul both have a view that is more restrictive about when the president can use force. The president can reach to 3 buckets to use force. Number 1 is inherent power under the second article of the Constitution. Number 2, the War Powers Act. And number 3, the specific authorization that's given to use force in Iraq that is the law of this land right now in 2002. They don't like that. They want a more restrictive view of that. And their frustration was they couldn't get the witnesses that were there to tell them exactly when we were at war. What is the definition of that?
Okay.
Look, that's a serious debate that we should have.
Understood. Let me ask you about this, though, because this is, of course, a president who has repeatedly disparaged the intel agencies you just cited there and the intelligence specifically. He's questioned the intelligence on Russian interference in the 2016 election. Notably, with Iran, he dismissed the U.S. intelligence community's assessment that Iran had been complying with the nuclear deal before he pulled out of it. So for Americans at home, why should they believe this intelligence today, in this case, when the one delivering it, the president, is someone who has repeatedly questioned intelligence?
Well, first of all, on a specific basis, obviously, the intelligence that was there, the kinds of things that we had that I can't go into certainly lead to that conclusion. But in addition to that, look at the facts that led up to this, the actual facts of what Soleimani was engaged in that led to his being taken out. But look, this argument over use of intelligence, both political parties have used it to their advantage, and with all due respect, you guys in the national media have done the same thing. If it plays to your narrative, you use it. If it doesn't play to your narrative, you don't use it. So, look, I'm in a different position. I'm on the committee. We've got to use these things to advise the president. It's unfortunate we're in that position, but we are. You're going to have to deal with it.
Well, with due respect, I do cover intelligence, and I will say from my own perspective, I do my best to present it as best I can, but a difficult subject area. Question on negotiations with Iran, because the president was notable in his comments yesterday following this attack. He said he's willing to negotiate with Iran. It was almost reminiscent of President Obama. You'll remember, unclenching the fist, which then led to negotiations. Would you support the U.S. negotiating with Iran, including on its nuclear program?
Yeah, Jim, that is a great question. One thing that's been lost in the national media on all of this is prior to this, we've had the Democrats and part of the national media whining about the fact that this president, this administration doesn't have a strategy on Iran. They're discombobulated. They're shooting from the hip. What you need to do is take the president's speech yesterday. First of all, note that it was textual. He gave that from text. He did not give it from the hip. Yeah. That speech that he gave yesterday was a clear statement of this administration's policy, the United States' policy on Iran, both before this week, during this week, and going forward from this week. Clearly in there, we don't want war with Iran. We want them to get rid of the bad behavior that they have, which is pursuing a nuclear weapon, which is supporting terrorists all over the world, being the largest exporter of terrorism that there is. mucking around in everybody's business in the Middle East and causing trouble wherever they can. If they'll do that, look, they can be like America. They can have the kinds of things that we have here. Right now, they're starving to death because of the sanctions we've put on them.
And it's interesting because it's a similar offer he's made in effect to North Korea there. I do want to ask you before you go about impeachment, because very soon you're going to be sitting as a juror, in effect, of this president in a Senate trial on impeachment. As you know, John Bolton, the president's former national security advisor, has now publicly raised his hand, saying he's willing to testify. Of course, he was blocked, as were other senior administration officials, by this White House from testifying in the House. As a senator and as a lawmaker, an elected lawmaker, shouldn't you have the right to hear his testimony?
Well, Jim, as you just pointed out, I'm a juror. Look, I've tried hundreds of cases. I know how to be a juror. I'm going to act as a juror. First thing we need to do is hear the opening arguments of each of the parties. They can tell us what they have. But look, it's not up to the jury to help the prosecution put on its case. The prosecution had every ability to get people in and get their testimony while they were over in the House. If they couldn't get them, they could go to the court and force them to come in. I'm absolutely, with an open mind, willing to listen to what they have to say. We'll proceed with the trial, and we'll do each of us will cast a vote that we believe is the right thing to do. I fall in that camp.
Would you vote for the right to hear witnesses? Because that's going to likely come up to vote.
I want to hear the opening statements and hear what they have right now and what they believe they can dig out if they have other witnesses. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Understood. Senator Jim Risch, pleasure to have you on the program this morning.
Jim, fair interview. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care.